Hi everyone. So I wanted to do a little video talking about the information literacy assignment. So let me go back here to course content so you can see where I'm finding this information. I talked about the info lit assignment at the beginning of the semester when we were going over the syllabus and the course schedule. And what it is a research paper based off of a product. And it's a little different than your typical papers. It's not going to be in MLA or APA format. So I wanted to kind of show you what I'm expecting and how I would like this research paper presented. So to find all the information that I'm talking about today, you'll go into course content where you have all your weekly folders, and I've added a folder that says the information literacy assignment. Note that it is due on November 8th. So far there's only 2 pieces of information in there. We're going to be working on a piece that I'll be adding, which is an example paper. So first is this info lit handout. When I open that up, it gives me the guidelines of the paper. Okay, and we'll go over those in a minute. When you're done with the paper, notice there's a submit info lit paper link. This is very similar to the links that you have for your lab, where you're attaching a copy of your lab as a PDF or a scan copy. So when you're completed your paper, you would just go in here and attach wherever it's at, whether it's on your computer or if it's in the cloud, somewhere like that. So don't put it as a text submission. Do it as an attached file, please. And it can be Word document or PDF. Either one's fine. So backing out of here, let's look at the guidelines. So what is the paper about? How do you start it? So you're going to be doing a research paper on a product, any type of over-the-counter product. You can use a beauty product, you can use a food, you can even use a medication. Okay? I ask that you do not use prescription medications because you need to take a picture of the label as part of the paper, and I don't want I don't need, and you shouldn't be sharing that information with other people. But you can do over-the-counter medications like Tylenol, cough medicines, anything like that. So once you find your product, making sure that it has an actual label, so it needs a label on it that has all the ingredients included in that product. You can even just look up a product on the internet. You don't have to go buy one, or you can just search your cupboards and see what you find. Because what we're going to do is we're going to analyze this product. Whatever product you choose, it needs to have at least 10 components. So what I mean by that, 10 ingredients. So you always see that ingredient list and it has just a whole bunch of names that you probably don't understand with commas. So we're going to analyze what those are, what their purpose is in that product, and if they're harmful, good for you, anything like that. So you're going to act like a chemist and determine all that information. If you have more than 10 ingredients, okay, so say you have 20, for instance, you need to characterize all 20. You don't just pick 10 of the ingredients that are in that product. So however many ingredients you have, you need to characterize all of them. So I recommend you don't pick a product that has like 40 because you're going to make more work for yourself. But it needs to have at least 10. So that's the low. And it can have more than that, but you need to characterize all ingredients in. Then once we characterize it all, and I'll go over how to do that, you're going to summarize your analysis with a paragraph discussing and giving examples of how this data affects you. So I have a couple questions here, and these are just thought-provoking questions. They might not apply to your product. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what I'm looking for in that paragraph. Now, this paper overall is 150 points. It's worth 10% of your grade, so it's worth the same amount as an exam. So if you're not a good test taker or you didn't do that well on the first exam, here's your chance to really take your time, get 100%, up your grade. So the discussion portion, this paragraph at the end, summarizing your analysis, is worth 25 points. So I don't want just 2 or 3 sentences, I want a good sized paragraph. I'm also not looking for 5 pages of analysis. Okay, and by that I mean I don't need you to explain in 5 pages. I just need a good sized paragraph. So some questions you might ask yourself are there any ingredients that surprised you? Because once you characterize these, you might find out there's a toxic ingredient in toothpaste, if toothpaste is what you chose. Did that surprise you? Why? Perhaps it's harmful to the environment or to you. Did the manufacturer take into account individual needs and effects on the environment? If it's a medication, can you overdose? Are there certain age limits to who can take it? What can it do to your body, your liver, your lungs, your stomach, if you take it too long or too much? Things like that. If it's a food product or a healthcare product, what are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? A lot of makeup, I mean, it has very small amounts of toxic compounds and chemicals in it, but used over a long period of time, and if you use a lot of it, that could affect your health. So just discuss that, okay? Pick a few of the ingredients and elaborate on them. So let's look at the checklist. So the main body of the paper is going to be used with this checklist. So the first thing you need to do is write the name of the product and the manufacturer. Then use the trade name product. Uses of the product. So what is it used for? If you chose some sort of soda, I've had someone do Coke Zero before. If they chose Coke Zero, what's the use? To drink, to quench your thirst, to give you caffeine, you know, something like that. So just explain what it's generally used for. If it's acetaminophen or ibuprofen, why do people use ibuprofen? For pain? What reasons? Next, you're going to put the actual label. So you can take a picture and then just put that picture in the body of your paper, or you can look up a picture of the label on the internet and use that picture. It doesn't matter to me. You need to make sure that you are showing all active and inactive ingredients, because I'm going to be looking at this label and making sure that you did characterize all ingredients. So if you skipped a few, you're going to be losing points. Now, after that, for each ingredient, you're going to do the following. So these same 5 things for each of the 10 or more ingredients included on your product, in your product. You're going to start by giving the component name. Okay, so what's the name? What's the ingredient name? I need to know what you're about to characterize, right? Then the structural formula. So for the structural formula, I mean, I want the picture of it. So we're learning next week in class how to draw Lewis structures, how to draw molecular atoms, the arrangement of them in space. That's what I want. I want the Lewis structure or the molecular shape of it. Like I want to see what atoms are involved, what's attached to what does this look like? Okay, and a good place to do that is actually PubChem, and I have that website listed at the bottom here so that you can find those structural formulas accurately and with a little ease. So once you have the formula in there, the reason you need it is because the next 2 questions are asking first, number 3 here is saying, is it a compound or element? Okay, well, you need to know the formula to answer that question. So when I say compound or element, compound is 2 or more different elements combined. And then an element would be 2 or more of the same elements combined. Okay, so for instance, if you had oxygen, O2 was one of your ingredients. Well, O2 is an element. But if you had CO2, so say you did a carbonated beverage, CO2 would be a compound because it's 2 or more different elements. So you would write that there. Then next, does it have ionic bonds, covalent bonds, or both? So you can look at the structure or formula that you found to determine this. So how would you figure this out, or how would you predict what type of bonds it has? Look at what elements are in that structural formula. So for instance, ionic bonds, that would be a metal with a nonmetal. Covalent bonds would be 2 nonmetals bonded together, or a semimetal and a nonmetal bonded together. So that's how you would identify that. Last but not least, so this is the important part, a part that's worth more points, is the purpose. So what do I mean by the purpose? Why is it in your mixture? What does it accomplish? Why did they add this? Is it a preservative? Is it used to kill germs? Like why is it there? Is it the active ingredient? Is it a binder? So if it's a pill, is it used to help bind the pill together? So you're gonna have to look up this information and figure out why it's in the product. So you'll do that. All 5 of those components will be involved for each of your ingredients. Once you're done characterizing all your ingredients, then you write that paragraph that I was talking about above. So the paragraph summarizing the data and impacts of your product. Give examples. So that's what these questions up here were about. This is to help you write the paragraph, the summary. Okay. Moving back down. Oh, and I have the, I copied and pasted them, so I have the questions there as well. So after the summary paragraph, don't forget references. So this is where that website is. This website's going to help you find some of those structures, the Lewis structures of some of the more complex ingredients or compounds. So good place, reliable source right there. All right, so your paper is due by midnight on November 8th, 10% of your grade. For the references, you can do a separate page, like at the very end, or as you'll see on the example I'm about to show you, you can put up the reference after each ingredient, whatever references you used for that particular ingredient. I don't have a minimum or maximum amount of references you can use. Just make sure that you're putting the sites you got the information from so that you're not plagiarizing, basically. All right, so I'm gonna show you now, let me share a different screen with you. So I'm gonna have to stop share and reshare, give me a second. Because there's my example. I wanted to show you an example paper. So I kind of took an example paper from a past student and altered it a little bit. So this isn't exactly how your paper has to look. There's no set format. This is just one way you can represent it. I just want to make sure that the information is clear and I can find all pieces. Make sure you're going in order of that guidelines, of that checklist. So here we have student name. So we kind of have a header with the course. So you could add your section number there. This particular paper was from a student in 2018. Your date would obviously be different. So November 2020. And then you can just title it Information Literacy Assignment, or you can title it Analysis of fill in the blank, whatever you prefer. So let's look at the important stuff, the body of the paper. So notice the first thing this student put, was the name of the product that they're analyzing. I thought this would be a good fit this semester because they actually did hand sanitizer. So they analyzed germ X, that type. Then they said, what were the uses of the product? For hand washing to reduce bacteria on the skin, recommended for repeated use. Okay, I'm pretty sure that it's not used for hand washing, it's used for sanitizing. I wouldn't count off for that, but just try to be as accurate as possible. Now you get to see my awesome spelling skills at work. Thank goodness for autocorrect. Okay, next, they scanned and attached a copy of the label. So try to make it as clear as you can. I usually can get a close-up and see, and a lot of times if I can't read your label accurately, what I'll do is I'll just look up the label myself to see what's in it. So next, you usually start with the active ingredient. That's usually what the label itself starts with. And then you go from there and do the rest of the ingredients. So what I went ahead and did on this one is I went in and just labeled the ingredients. So the first ingredient, just numbered them 1, the second ingredient numbered 2, so on and so forth. So for the first ingredient, the active ingredient was ethyl alcohol. So another term for that is ethanol. You don't have to put the systematic name, they just chose to. Okay. Now there's 2 ways you can do the structure. You can look up the structure and hand draw it in paint like this student did, or you can look it up on a website and just copy and paste. And I'll show how to do that after we look at a few more parts of this paper, just because I'm going to have to keep switching screens with you. So this would be the structural formula of ethanol. This is helpful. Why? Because your next two questions ask, is it a compound? Is it an element? What type of bonds does it have? So here they said ethyl alcohol is a compound. Why? Because it contains more than one type. And we can see that it has carbon, it has oxygen, it has hydrogen. It has more than one type of element combined, so it's a compound. Next, are they ionic bonds, covalent bonds, or are both present? Because sometimes you will see both. Well, in this case, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, they're all nonmetals. So that is how they came to the conclusion that it's covalent. The purpose would be an antiseptic. So usually the reason ethanol is present in sanitizers would be to kill germs as an antiseptic. So just write a purpose. It can be a word or two, or it could be a sentence of the reason why it is in that product. Notice this student chose to put their references right after each ingredient. So you could choose to do that, or just put them all on the final page of the paper. The next ingredient. So this ingredient is I don't even know how to say that, barbadensis gel. So basically it's aloe vera. So we all know what aloe vera is. It comes from an aloe plant. So they had to find, the formatting got kind of messed up when I was going through this paper. Okay, so they had to find the structure for it. So this is the structure of aloe vera, the chemical compound structure. Now, either of these would be acceptable. I would prefer the top one because it has the actual elements. So I can see there's oxygens, carbons, and hydrogens present, and that's it. But the ball and stick model is fine as well. So that's the structure of aloe vera, probably found on that PubChem site because it's hard to find that structure. So based off that structure, you need to answer, is it a compound and what type of bonds? So obviously it's a compound. There's a lot of different elements combined. As for covalent versus ionic, well, all the elements involved are either carbon, oxygen, or hydrogen, once again. So all nonmetals, it is covalent. So they have that written right after. Compound, covalent. What's the purpose of this? For moisturizing. So the product itself is used to sanitize your hands, but that could really dry out your hands. So they add aloe vera to help with that, to counteract that effect that the ethanol alcohol has on it. All right, now I'm just going to look at one or two more ingredients. I don't want to go through the whole paper. I actually deleted a very big part of it just so that you could only see. All right, so I wanted to talk about this component here. So a lot of people, a lot of products that you choose, they might have dye in it, okay? And you can characterize dye. So this is one of my most common questions that I get from students is, how do I characterize dye? Well, if it tells you specifically the number, so is it blue number 1? Is it red number 3? Like what type of dye is it? Because if it gives you the number, then it can be characterized. And if you enter that into that PubChem site, it will give you the structure of that dye. So this is the structure of blue number 1. So using that structure, you need that structure so that you can finish the characterization. Tell me if it's a compound, tell me the type of bonds. So for this one in particular, it's a compound, which pretty much all your ingredients are going to be compounds. Spoiler alert, because you're going to have more than one element. But the structure is helpful for ionic and covalent. That will differ for every ingredient. So the types of bonds here, well, I have both. I have ionic and covalent. So how do I know there's ionic? Because you can see there's a sodium plus ion. There's actually 2 of them. There's charges. If charges are present, there's ions present and ionic bonds are present. But there's also covalent bonds because We have sulfur to oxygen bonds, we have carbon to carbon bonds, we have nitrogen to carbon bonds, and those are all nonmetals and nonmetals together. So there is both present. So what's the purpose of blue number 1? To add color, to make a pleasant color, or to counteract the horrible color that it once was. The other ingredient that I wanted to talk about is fragrance, because a lot of your products that you choose might have a fragrance in it. Now, fragrance is an ingredient that you cannot characterize. So if you ever get to an ingredient that you can't characterize, still include it in your paper, include it in your analysis. You wouldn't be able to answer any of the characterization questions except for the purpose. So you can see the purpose I put in here was to give the product a more pleasant odor and possibly mask the aroma of other ingredients. Okay, so since I couldn't fully characterize it, it is not count as one of my 10 ingredients. So when you're picking, if you only are picking a product with only 10 ingredients, make sure all 10 are fully characterizable. All right, so you would need at least 7 other ingredients after this, doing the same steps to each of those ingredients. Now I wanted to show an example of a paragraph that would summarize the analysis of this product. So notice this person is saying it's a hand sanitizer. It claims to kill germs and bacteria. That is helpful, but it has drawbacks. So they're exploring the negative sides of it based off of their analysis. Notice when they talk about it as well, which is very helpful, is they include a few of the ingredients from the list. They talk about isopropyl alcohol. I believe they also talked about aloe. Here it is, aloe vera and glycerin. So glycerin's another one of the ingredients. So throw in a few of the ingredients that surprised you or that were important to the product. So just give a good sized paragraph. All right, so that is it for the example paper. And I'm gonna go ahead and save this paper and post it on Blackboard for you so that you can see an example. Keep in mind, this is not a full paper. You would need 10 fully characterized ingredients. So now I'm going to go back to the internet so that I can show you PubChem. Maybe. Stops freezing on me. So here's the PubChem site. So what is glycerin? Is the ingredient we just saw. So you could type in the ingredient and it gives you the molecular formula. A lot of times they'll give you the structural formulas. I don't know if it's going to help too much with purpose, but there's a few different structures you could choose from. So here's the molecular formula, C3H8O3. So you could use that to figure out if there is covalent or ionic bonds. So they give a few reasons. When you're posting your reasons, so the purpose why it's in there, make sure it's the purpose why it's in your product, okay? Not just its purpose in general, because some people in the past have put, well, it's used in the industry for, it's like, nope, I'm not looking what this chemical or compound is used for in the industry. I want to know why it's in your product. What is its use in your specific product? Okay, so if I click on one of those structures, you can see it gives me the structure itself. So you could add this into your paper by using the snipping tool. I think most laptops have that anyway. And you would just go and make a copy of it, and then you could paste it directly into your paper. So it's just kind of like a quick, easy way using PubChem to get that structure. That's usually the part that most students find the most difficult to find. So, All right, that is all I have for you. So let me know if you have any questions. I mean, there's plenty of time to get it done, but I urge you not to put it off till the last minute. If you find yourself with a few days or a week where you have less homework than normal, at least get it started. I mean, you're going to have questions and email them to me as you go. If you have an ingredient that you don't think you can fully characterize, just send me that ingredient and I'll tell you if you can or not. Okay, I'm not gonna, don't send me your entire list and I'll tell you which ones. But if there's one that you've been looking for the structure and stuff like that and you can't seem to find anything, just be like, can I characterize this one? And I'll let you know. So, all right. Well, that's all, folks.